Welcome to The Audience Isn't Waiting. Are we ready to change?
Hello everyone, and welcome to the session The Audience Isn't Waiting, Are We Ready to Change? My name is Sigrid Bashman, and I run an audience initiative at the regional film fund Film i Väst in Sweden. Today we will be talking about public film agencies, audiences, and what the future might look like. Together with my colleague Thomas Eskilsson, we've written a report about this topic, so don't forget to grab one on your way out, because we don't want to bring them back on the flight to Sweden. In a few moments, you will hear from 3 industry experts and their take on the audience, and I'm thrilled to have them here with us today. And I've asked each of them to prepare a statement for us as an industry to reflect on. I will give you a deeper introduction of these guys later, but briefly, we have Vicky Brown from the British Film Institute. We have Carlo Crestodina from the production company Tempesta. And we have Malene Blenkov from the Danish Film Institute. And my colleague Thomas Eskilsson, Film i Väst Analysis. So, this is a report about audiences, but really it's about us, about how we, as a film sector, think, work, and make decisions in a rapidly changing landscape. This is part of Public Film Funding at a Crossroads series, who Film i Väst Analysis, Thomas, been working on for the last years. And this report that we publish builds on ideas from earlier publications, like The Answers, that was published a few weeks ago, but it also stands on its own. We're seeing a fundamental shift, declining audience number, structural imbalances, and a value chain that has new challenges. We also see a deeper challenge, one that concerns the role of film in our democratic society. If we believe that cinema has culture and democratic value, we must ask ourselves, how do we ensure it remains relevant, accessible, and truly connected to the people it's meant for? Our hope is that this report can spark a conversation about how we, together as an industry, can adapt and stay relevant. Especially to ensure that the stories we create are the stories audience want to experience together at the cinema. And for this report, we interviewed 16 industry experts from across Europe, producers, public film agencies, distributors, exhibitors, and audience designers. And I see some of you in this room here today, so thank you so much for your contribution. And the report includes 3 core parts: a chapter on the cinema landscape, a chapter on the streaming landscape, written by the film agency, and at the heart of it all, reflections and findings from the interviews. This is not a report that claims to offer a single answer. Instead, it opens the conversation. It asks, what do we need to rethink, and how do we move forward together? Europe is diverse. Every public film agency, every country operates under different frameworks, resources, and expectations. And this report doesn't aim to prescribe a single solution, but to open a conversation that each territory can reflect on its own context. And many of the findings also highlight this diversity as a key factor in how challenges and opportunities are perceived. So one of the most pressing issues raised was the imbalance between production and the rest of the value chain, especially exhibition and distribution. And the imbalance isn't just financially, it's structural and even culturally. And many interviews described systems where funding is heavily weighting towards production, while the space and strategies needed to actually reach an audience are under-supported or left behind. And this has consequences. It means that too many films compete for limited visibility. It means that films risk disappearing, not because they lack value, but because the system doesn't support their journey to an audience. And we can't meet today's challenges just by making more films. We have to think about more carefully how those films will be received, about who we want to reach, how to reach them, and whether the stories we're telling are truly landing where and for who they're meant to. I also want to stress that this is not about customizing films for an audience. It's about helping the films reach the people that it's meant for after all those years working on the projects. Many interviews also highlighted the need for change within the public film agencies. A greater flexibility when it comes to audience development, more knowledge and training about audience work, better tools for audience insight and analysis, and a shift away from models that focus solely on production. But this responsibility doesn't rest with only the public film agencies. The wider industry must also step up, not as a passive recipient of funding, but as an active partner in shaping audience relationships. Several voices asked some hard but necessary questions. Are we telling stories that resonate with today's audiences? Do we overestimate what people actually want to see? Can we acknowledge when it's time to rethink or adapt a system? And how do we define success? Is it still about box office numbers, or should we also be talking about long-term impact, diversity, and cultural relevance? The streaming landscape offers another valuable perspective. Streaming platforms haven't only responded to audience behavior, they actively shaped it. While their internal data remains closed, we can still see some telling patterns. Films and series no longer compete, they complement each other. Streaming didn't replace linear TV, it reinvented it. And perhaps cinema can evolve not by copying streaming, but finding new ways to integrate in today's storytelling ecosystem. Streaming doesn't have to be the enemy of cinema. If anything, it can be a strategic ally, helping to expand reach, build habits, and sustain interest in a film as a form. There's no single actor who can fix everything, but everyone has a role to play. And what needed now is shared responsibility. There are many different views on who shares the responsibility about audiences. Some mean it's the producer, others mean it's the distributor, and some says it's a shared responsibility. We can no longer afford to treat audience as someone else's job. It's not just the producer's task, it's not only the distributor's concern. If we want audiences to care about our films, every part of the value chain must care about the audience. And that means working together earlier, more intentionally, and with a greater openness across roles and institutions. Honest evaluation. This means asking the hard questions, not just about individual projects, but about how our system works. Which part of our support structures are outdated? Are we funding out of habit rather than impact? What are we measuring and what are we missing? We need to be willing to challenge our own assumption, even when it's uncomfortable. Long-term thinking. Audience engagements isn't something you think about at the end of a project. It's a long game. It requires time, it requires trust. And public film agencies, in particular, have a key role to play here. Not just in funding single projects, but in helping build the conditions for deeper audience connection over time. And above all, the courage to act, even when we don't have all the answers. It's important to acknowledge that no size-fits-all model exists. Every public film agency operates under different conditions, priorities, political contexts. What works in one territory might not be possible or even desirable in another. We hope this report can be a starting point, a space for reflection, collaboration, and meaningful change, one that puts the audience at the center. So, we will now welcome our first speaker. She is the Senior Sales and Distributor Executive at the BFI, where she oversees the international and UK rollout of all the BFI Filmmaking Fund's funded feature films. Recent titles include Santos, Sister Midnight, and Bird. Give a warm applause to Vicky Brown.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, thank you very much to Film Väst for highlighting this very important topic and for inviting me to speak today. My name is Vicky Brown. I'm the Senior Sales and Distribution Exec at the British Film Institute. They are the lead organisation for film in the UK. Our mission is to ensure that everyone across the UK can benefit from screen culture, but we are facing a real challenge. Audience behaviours and expectations and pathways to those audiences have changed. I know everyone in this room knows the value of cinema, but we're not the ones that need convincing. If we don't adapt, we will continue to lose audiences, and then we're in danger of becoming irrelevant. The situation is challenging, but if you'll excuse the pun, it's not mission impossible. Public agencies can't rest on their laurels, and we do need to do something now. We can't maintain the status quo, so what is it that public agencies can do? I want to start with data. It's a hot topic, but it is an important one. There is an old adage that knowledge is power, and I very much believe this to be the case here. So much of film is driven by instinct and a vision and creativity, but when it comes to understanding audiences, our decision-making can't be assumption-driven. As a former sales agent, I was often in rooms with distributors who would talk about a particular actor or a type of film not resonating with audiences in their territory. And it was very difficult to push back if you didn't have the data to back up your case. We're very fortunate at the BFI to have a research and statistics team. And we were recently behind a report called The Wider World of Film, which was a deep dive into how audiences in the UK are watching film, what influences them, and the key drivers and barriers to consumption. Some of the key findings that I want to highlight today include 95% of UK adults reported to have watched a film in the past 12 months, so films are clearly still universally popular. Digital services are the primary ways in which audiences choose to watch film, with 43% of UK adults watching at least one film on an SVOD platform every week. And the biggest barriers to cinema engagement we found were the cost of a single ticket and the lack of appealing films. I would encourage you to look at the report for yourselves, but the point I'm trying to make is, yes, we must encourage data collection and share that information right across the value chain, but there is also plenty of robust analysis of how audiences have changed, and how markets should adapt. So let's be sure to embrace those learnings. We also need to start thinking about audiences much, much earlier. All too often, audience thinking happens after the film is made, but that is too late. You don't want to spend years of blood, sweat, and tears making a film, but what is it all for if there isn't an audience there to watch it? We need to bake audience thinking into the creative process early. We're not here to turn filmmakers into distribution strategists, but projects shouldn't be developed in isolation. Public agencies can act as a bridge between the creative and the commercial, and we should encourage filmmakers to engage with sales agents and distributors at script stage and production stage to not only help them shape the project, but to have honest conversations and to help them better navigate the market to avoid any nasty surprises down the line. One area that we're thinking about at the moment, and I know other agencies have already embraced this, is audience testing. This is not about focus grouping the life out of a film, but is there a benefit to having a sneak peek of an audience's reaction to help identify who that audience is and how to position the film in order to reach them? As someone that used to work at a distribution company, I always think there should be more love for distribution. Filmmakers come to the public agencies like the BFI to get their film financed. But are public agencies guilty of focusing too much on production without paying closer attention to supporting the pipeline for those films? At the BFI, we have ambitions to see a broader subsidized UK distribution and exhibition sector. With that, we were pleased to see that the Culture, Media and Sport Committee in the UK has recommended a 25% tax relief on P&A costs for films claiming the independent tax film credit to support the distribution and exhibition of British film. The report also recommended capital and operational expenditure funding for cinemas, so funding cinemas to improve their facilities and supporting their everyday running costs. And as Sigrid highlighted earlier, it is a shared responsibility. Everyone on the film value chain has a part to play. It's important to be transparent, but to also listen and engage. There's value to creating a balance. It's not just about making super commercial films that don't really need public agency support, but for other films, festivals should be the launch pad and not the final destination. In a nutshell, I would say public agencies have a key role to play, but if the audience isn't waiting, then neither should we. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Vicky. So, moving on. He founded the production company Tempesta in 2009, known for discovering and nurturing talents like Alice Rovaker, Leonardo de Costanzo, and emerging voices such as Margherita Vicario. Give a warm applause to Carlo Crestorina.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. They invited me in a similar panel in Venice, and I thought they will never invite me again. But they have a thing, they're a bit masochistic, so they invited me in Cannes as well. Thank you, Sigrid. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Film Väst. Yeah, the audience is changing. But my question to producers and to public fund is, should we follow or should we lead? So what is happening, I think, there are many things happening around, but one is that more and more people want or think they take part. They want to feel involved in the success of a film. A film is no longer attractive because it descends from above, from the golden realm where untouchable people create masterpieces. A film becomes meaningful because thousands, even millions of people connect with it. They reinterpret, they retell, they modify it, make it their own. And those people are like me and you. Those people are me, actually. So the question about public investment to me in this changing landscape is to not just measure the audience engagement as a metric for the success of a film. So not just ask how many people interacted with this film, but where and how did that interaction create value? And what kind of value are we thinking about? To me, it's important not to forget that the purpose of public investment is the common good. That's why measuring is not enough. We're not trying to chase the audience like the mom when you need to feed a kid, you know, they're running around in the kitchen and you go back with the spoon, you know. We need to shape the audience, expand their gaze, show them things that they didn't know they liked and they could love. Thinking about innovation in terms of common good, that's the real challenge. A modest proposal. Let's try to see the audiovisual industry as an ecosystem. The health of an ecosystem is its ability to survive and innovate through biodiversity. The ability to generate multiple solutions for every challenge. If the number of creative proposals decreases, chances are that chances of solving problems also shrink. And I think this is exactly what is happening around us. So the storytelling ecosystem has seen the rise of very powerful predators. Actors with a disproportionate, is that correct? Yeah, disproportionate dominance. To me, behind the pervasive presence of platforms and major investors, we are seeing a concentration of decision power. A shrinking number of people now decide which stories get told, how they are told, and by whom. So to me, the only solution is to protect the activators of biodiversity. And to me, the activator, the guardian of biodiversity in our ecosystem, are independent producers. I know that it looks like I'm shaking my own flag. But that's what I know, and that's what's actually. So the audience is moving. The audience is fragmented. The audience is difficult to contour. So let's diversify the solution. So if we want to understand and engage with today's participatory audience, we must multiply the number of possible solutions. To me, the only way is to redefine, not just protect, expand, and diversify the role of independent producer. The best use of public investment is to create patient capital, funding that supports independent producers and focuses on long-term goals, not the short-term quarter results. And to me, the only solution, I know it's a delicate one, is to figure out how to not just fund projects, but find a way to fund companies and create opportunities for long term. I know what you're thinking, probably. Say, yeah, this gentleman is suggesting to diversify, multiply, and we have too many films already. What is he talking about? Yeah, well, I think if we start funding companies, we will have less films because they don't need to produce film to sustain themselves, and better film. If we let the big companies decide, we will have a lot of beautiful plantation, you know, that bear fruit at the right season, right size and everything, but we will not have forests. And fairy tales are born in forest, not in plantation. And we are in the business of fairy tale. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlo. So, to our next speaker. She has produced over 35 titles, features, documentaries, shorts, drama series. Last year, she was here in Cannes and got Oscar nominated with Magnus von Horn's film, The Girl with the Needle. And as of January 2024, she is head of fiction at the Danish Film Institute. Give a warm applause to Malene Blenkow.
Life is art, and art is created out of life by lively beings for living beings. Life is precious. The hospital sector preserves lives, film expose life. They stabilize, film rock life. Please close your eyes. It's dark. Imagine the smell of popcorn, salty and itchy. And you are now about to dig deep into somebody's life. You don't know who. What do you hear? What do you hear? A horse. Please open your eyes. Surprise! It wasn't a horse, it was a zebra. A zebra with wants and needs. The horse-zebra analogy is often used in the hospital sector. It means that if a disease looks 100% like a horse, sound like a horse, it might actually be a zebra. And crucial to treat differently in order to save life. What stories do we want to tell, direct, produce, distribute, support? How is it perceived by the audience? What do we want? What do we need? We're not doctors, though main film characters with certainty, hopefully, are malfunctioning for the sake of life to understand our lives, family, society, world, to understand history, culture, emotions. No, we're film. Most of us in here, too, represent the public system. We are financial funders of film who inject cool cash life into films to attract even more life in the cinemas. For an audience who bought a ticket to be entertained, perhaps even to reflect and understand. We're not the life art arises from, but like the doctors, we also need to be scientific, persistent, and creative and caring. And how do we stay alert? How do we inject the elevating vitamins into the right films? How do we make sure that we elevate the absolute best film with the best money? We aim for films of high quality, obviously. But we must support a variety of species to attract a variety of audiences. We must acknowledge the audience, though never try to please them. Let's have the urge to surprise the audience. The audience truly has wants, but also needs. Awareness. Let's be aware, stay on our tiptoes, analyze, do reports, PDF slides, forums, talks, and PowerPoints. But will that in itself bring the audience to the cinema? We need to take action based on those profound knowledge, actively support the industry, and thereby empower our filmmakers to conquer the audience. 5 years ago, the Danish Film Institute initiated a specific design audience focus scheme. The scheme allowed for filmmakers to apply and receive funding to process exercises together with potential target groups, not to violate creative ambitions, but to enhance goals. And at that time I produced, and I was hugely skeptic of the fact of thinking about the audience prior to shooting the film. I felt it downgraded our fine art. But the fact is, the Film Institute was far ahead of us. The Danish Film Institute had done specific research and realized what was ahead of us. The comfy couch was luring the audience into streaming. Not that we filmmakers didn't know, because we did. But the system can make procedures and schemes and initiate ways of thinking, striving to overcome challenges ahead of us. And all kinds of schemes could be relevant to create our clever tools. And I truly think the Danish Film Institute managed to change Danish films in a strategic direction to meet the audience in a more competitive market. Lots of filmmakers were against this so-called bureaucratic nonsense. But the fact is that we today at the Danish Film Institute still provide financial support to filmmakers who now create their own design process on how to develop their project, how to create awareness of their specific audience in the early development stage of films. So at this point, the Danish Film Institute need to move on. The audience focus is well established, and we are now in the making of new strategic systems. I'm a true believer in storyteller as a free spirit. And there's no such thing as a general recipe on how to reach an audience, apart from awareness combined with action. But let's never do anything out of fear. Let's get together and be even more courageous. The money we distribute is an enormous power. Let's make sure the power has artistic impact. Let's create schemes, procedures that support films with an audience impact, always hand in hand with powerful filmmakers. Let's not let them down in fear of losing the audience. Our role is to have core true data, the backbone, research, smart insight, scientific knowledge, but we must never fear our findings, whether it's a horse, zebra, or giraffe. Let's make sure we hire courageous, visionary employees in our funding systems. They don't all need to be clever with Excel or Outlook or PDFs or something like that. They must understand the art of filmmaking to be able to listen to visions, hear the prrr and the whatever language is spoken. Praise the individual approach, craft, vision, and courage. We must take chances while at the same time initiate the right amount of thoughts on future ups and downs approaching. Systemic strategies, that's our tool for change, as long as it paves the road the artists walk on. So please close your eyes. It's dark. The smell of popcorn, it was an illusion. What do you hear? Silence. Let's take 15 seconds to think of how each of us, whether you create, you fund or find films, what is your exact next profound initiative to work ambitiously with this challenge? The reality that the audience need to want and need our films in the cinema. So I'll count now for 15 seconds. Please open your eyes. And once this session is over, please ask the first person you see outside with a glass of rosé to share insights, ideas and thoughts on specific initiatives, how we rock the life of films in the cinema full of audience. This is a collective change we have to beat in the system, in the ecosystem, in the individual life of art we chose to live. Thank you.
So, Thomas, you have now listened to these industry experts who share their perspective, ideas, and I'm going to let you do a summary. But before that, I think you have some questions.
Yes, I have some questions to this prestigious group of people, and now I should try to keep the microphone close to my mouth instead of moving around too much, so you can actually hear what I'm saying. But I'm really, here we have two film agencies, even if there is sort of a mixture with Malene, because she's still have some sort of producer perspective, I think really buried deep down in herself. So there we have the bridge to Carlo. But I'm really interested, Vicky and Malene, about what can you see if you look forward like 4 or 5 years? What are you doing as film agencies? What can you do that strengthen, so to speak, the work with audience development, to finding, to identifying, whatever audience? What are you doing in 2030? Have you changed?
It's hard to look that far ahead. I think sometimes you only realize the changes come when you're actually there. And I think we're all guilty as sort of talking about, oh, you know, this is a problem we need to develop, and then we keep talking, we don't actually do anything about it. I'd like to think that, you know, I don't want to use any sort of alarmist words. I don't want to say we've reached a crisis point, but I'd like to think that, you know, with the information that we have to hand, in 5 to 10 years' time, we are better aligning creatives with audiences. We're having more transparent conversations. We're not producing things and making things in silo. We're understanding, you know, and to people's point on the panel, it isn't necessarily about ensuring that we have the biggest box office success. It's, can our films also have a cultural impact? You know, are there underserved audiences that we aren't reaching? And using the tools that we already have to hand and building on them to actually bridge those gaps. I think it's not about taking a magic wand. I do think we do have the resources available, but it is a combined effort across the value chain to ensure that, you know, we can get those excited creative voices in front of the people that want to watch them.
And do you see your role, because I mean the BFI fund not exactly all UK movies, or co-fund not exactly all UK movies, and do you see that you can play a role also for films that you are absolutely not funding? Or will you concentrate on the films you are funding?
We often support films that aren't financed by us. And I'm speaking on behalf of the audience team here, but we have an audience project fund where organizations, distributors, community cinemas can come with a project in mind, spot a particular audience that they're trying to target, and the BFI can provide additional support to help them achieve those goals. And a lot of the times, they're not things that we support. So it's not just prioritizing our titles, but it's, from our perspective, it's ensuring that we're supporting the entire ecosystem.
So, Malena, DFI, the front runner when it comes to audience work, what have you developed? What have you strengthened when we reach 2030?
I was really lucky to actually take over a position where it's a really strong film institute, and I believe we have a wonderful system. I've been, producing through the system also for many years, but I think there's always room for improvement. And I think the audience scheme that I just explained works really well, and I love the fact that the filmmakers are actually taking over. And I think we just have to keep looking at the different schemes we have and improve them also together with the business. And, not only talk to the filmmakers, but also to the cinemas. When, where did the film actually land? How do we work together with the cinemas? What's actually needed out there? What's not? And make sure that the schemes we have all the time are improved, to follow whatever is going on outside in the world. And that's what I hope that we can be proud of in 5 years' time and say we didn't snooze. We were on the beat, and we actually did acknowledge what was going on. And, who has which difficulties, and try to make schemes that can enhance everybody so we all play together, with the money we have and the possibility we have.
And now, Carlo, comes some really hard questions to you. Because, okay, let's say we move in your direction and start basically funding production companies instead of projects. But what if you don't manage to deliver as production companies? What should the public do then?
Well, I think that, first of all, any sort of investment and responsible investments should acknowledge that the risk of failure. You have to kiss a lot of toads to find the prince, kind of thing.
But if it's million of the toads, then
exactly.
Yeah,
not too
a
many.
big problem.
Not too many. No, the metaphor doesn't work in this sense. I think that then we have to define success, we also have to define failure, because a failure in terms of financing and can, for example, create and form good professionals, right? That have created the company, then the company didn't work and went bust, but they will, spring up elsewhere and do the good elsewhere. So what I'm trying to say is that there are, in one investment, there are many factors, not just the final. The issue is, though, that I think that what is still missing a bit or a lot, depending on countries, is for public funding to understand what producers are about. I have an experience of producing, around Europe with many funds, and what I find someone missing is, do you understand what is my role in this creative process? Collective creative process, and where I sit? Do you see me as a facilitator, as a finance aggregator, as a problem solver, or as a co-creator of the process? And I think this is very important because it will change the conversation a lot. So,
Malene, you have been both. And what do you say? Do you think we will come back to 100%? We not have 75% recovery rate. Will we come back to 100% if we go for Carlos' solution?
No, I said to Carlos earlier today that I find it so wrong that I actually also find it interesting. No, but the fact is, I don't think we should. No, okay, but it's just. I really do think that we should not support companies. We do not support business. We support art. And that's the public funding. But I think it's also, can I just disclaim one thing? That what you also said is, because I think you overproduce films in Italy, right? Yeah. You produce too many films. We don't do that in Denmark. But your idea was also, that can maybe bring down the amount of films. Yeah. And we have a totally different issue in Denmark. Maybe we don't produce enough films. So we can also say that we come from very different, backgrounds from this conversation. Yes. So we might actually agree someday. But I actually think that, we should support the stories, the projects, etc., and not the businesses. That said, I want producers to survive as well. And not only survive, but actually be able to live on what they're doing.
But I also think this is a good example, what me and Thomas has been talking about and reading in the report, that all the territories, all the public film interests are different. So there is no solution for whole of Europe. We all have to treat every territory differently.
And Vicky, in the UK, where I think you have a specific challenge, that you have quite small amount of money for culture policy. Extremely small, among the smallest per capita in the entire Europe. Do you think that you could rethink and go for Carlos' solution? If the BFI, because you can say the rest of the system is another game.
I think at the BFI we believe producers to be the engine room of the industry. Bit of flattery.
So
the
here,
engine room.
that was a nice remark.
Yes. I'm letting you down gently. No. I think I think the approach isn't sort of. I do think there is value in supporting producers, and I don't know if there are any UK producers in the room, but I'm sure they will all hold their hands up and go, support is very much needed in the UK. It is very difficult to be an independent producer in the UK. While I do think there is value to supporting producers and production companies, and the BFI have historically funded production companies, as you note, our pot is very small, and I think we have to look across the value chain and be as efficient as we can. I think the one thing, as you talked about the millions of toads, and I wouldn't not accuse Carlo of making toads, but I guess, you're looking at it from your angle and your experience. The question that I would have is that, if you multiply that out and you are funding multiple production companies, are we in danger of, I know the idea is it means that producers can have, can pause and not feel that pressure to churn out films. And that might be your take, but that might not be everyone's take. Are we in danger of then encouraging other companies to go, oh, great, I am getting this extra money, so maybe I'm making 3, 4, 5 films a year, but we don't have a pipeline to support the volume of films coming through.
Yes, and Carlo, you should be given the opportunity to sort of say something against, and then we will move on to an entirely different topic. But you will have a short. No. Yeah, go.
We represented our.
You have stated them very clearly.
Need to agree.
No, okay, that's great.
So, Thomas, do you want to ask some last questions before you make
I think
your
there is
summary?
one last question, and that is about funding systems and balancing, the one thing that you also mentioned in your speech, Sigrid. In most film agencies, you can say that the vast majority of money is spent on production funding. And proportionally, quite little goes to distribution and exhibition. Should this be changed?
yeah, it's worth looking into, definitely. At the same time, we don't have that much money. So it's also, you know, where do you want to put your money? It's always a difficult question. But I think it's worth looking into that. It's also what I call a scheme. Should we actually reevaluate what we put our money into, which films we put our money into, and how much we put into it? I definitely agree that there is something to look into. Yes.
And should you change in Italy? Not you yourself,
No.
but you.
No, I would change a lot. But no, but in Italy, it's interesting. It would be interesting to study it a little bit. And I don't have figures. I can't really help you here. But in Italy, we actually fund the whole chain of value. There is tax credit for national distributors. There is tax credit for exhibitors. There is tax credit for international sales agent. We're not sure yet there is money. I mean, but it's there. I mean, the principle is there. We'll figure out about money, about where actually the money comes from. Don't worry. But I can't tell you, did it work or not? It's interesting, though. It's an experiment. Exhibitors were given money to digitalize their theaters in the past, massive amount of money. Now they're giving tax credit and blah, 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 blah. Is it changing? I don't know. What I still miss, what I still sometimes miss from the public investment in what we do, which is essential, is a sense of a mission. What do you want and what do we want to achieve with this public investment? And to me, saying good films is not enough. I think that we need to try and get more. Like, for example, work on conditionalities. Like, we spend public money in your industry, we want your industry to be better in terms of gender gap pay, whatever. You know, you got it. You know, men being paid more than women, and sustainability, inclusivity, and blah blah blah. We found you give something back, but we need a general inspiration. We need a mission. We don't need public funding to tell us what films we need to make. This is a completely different conversation to me.
Yes, that is a complete. So I will just say some last words, some sort of what can we conclude from this conversation. I hope you felt that there was some logic in the reasoning, that we didn't move too much back and forth. But I think there is some interesting takes. One of them is the need to more or less continue to develop this work, or the work with audiences, the audience understanding, the audience whatever we like to call it, and also to be prepared to find more complex methods to measure what we are actually doing, and also to understand the audience. Because the audience isn't waiting, but the audience is also extremely much more diverse than it was perhaps only 10 years ago. You cannot understand it at all in the same way. And it's continued to transform, and that I think will be a major challenge for the future. The other take from this, and it's very clearly also in the report itself, is the need to be proactive. The need for everyone actually to be more proactive, not only for film industries, but I think it goes a lot for film industries that often takes a very passive role, and also often even underline the importance of taking a very passive role. Now we have chosen two film industries that takes a very active role when it comes to audiences, but you can find many of your colleagues, not to be too nasty, that perhaps doesn't take that very proactive role. And the third that we haven't spoken about yet and will not speak about is basically, okay, audience. The audience isn't waiting, but the audience is also everywhere. And we are still that what I call cinema paradiso romantics in this sector. We are very focused on cinema, on the experience, the cinema experience, the need for us to go to the movies, to experience content together, etc., etc. And I think the next time we meet and discuss these type of topics, I think we should have sort of a self-critical discussion. If all these beliefs that we cinema paradiso romantics, I count myself as one, if they still stand, or if we can experience things in a much more interesting ways, in a different way. So with that, for all of you to think about in the future, at least from my side, I say goodbye.
I'm not nostalgic, I'm political. It's different.
Thank you so much to our panel, our experts. Again, thank to everyone who's part of the report. There are some reports on a table here. Please grab one on your way out. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you. Thank you.